Hello.
Hi, Tracy. Happy Wednesday.
Yeah, happy hump day. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been a good few weeks. So, yeah, I've been quite busy, work, so forth. So, yeah, it's been eventful.
What's highlight?
Highlight. Oh gosh, highlight of the weeks. It's been pretty busy, really. Okay, I got a confession to make.
Oh.
It was actually my birthday last week. So
No, you didn't tell me. How did I not know that?
confession is because I think maybe people around me know this already. I like having a solo birthday. I really like it. That's why I don't mention it until it's over. I really like a solo birthday, honestly. It's actually, I know it's a day where I really get to revel in a lot of luxuries. This year is one of the hottest days in Sydney, which never happens. And I basically had an outdoor massage on the coast.
Oh,
that was the highlight. It was so good. It was honestly so good. And it's like when you close your eyes and all you can hear is the waves. And it was literally like down the road from here, from where I live. It was amazing. So yeah, that was really good. And I just just kind of like had a really nice meal and just kind of watched the sun go down, people watching. It was just really nice. I really liked it.
So, okay. Yeah. So when we went out, had you had your birthday?
We did, yes. It was my birthday is a day before St. Patrick's Day. So
oh, gee, we could have celebrated your birthday then.
I was silently celebrating. It was all good. Had a really good time. And that was actually one of the other highlights is obviously, spending time with yourself and your friends and meeting your mum. So I got to meet Tracy's mum. So which was really nice. So which is great. Yeah. After hearing so much about Kay, so it was really good.
Oh, well, we had fun, didn't we, on St. Patrick's Day?
And I have to say, your mum lives up to her hype.
She'd be glad to hear that.
Yeah,
she'd be delighted.
Lovely.
Yeah.
It was really nice to also hear about Mother's Day was coming up, and then obviously hearing your Mother's Day and having your mum over, which you can tell us all about.
Well, Mother's Day in the UK. But yeah, my mum was here. She was visiting on holiday. We went on a trip to New Caledonia, which was amazing. It was just the most beautiful paradise. It's the only way I can describe it. The crystal blue waters, clay sand. It was like clay sand, literally. It was really funny because I've never been on sand like it in my life. So what you do is you walk down the beach, but you were close to the water. Mm-hmm. You just be walking and you just sink. Oh, like it'd be up to your knee. In fact, my mum got stuck up to her legs. I don't know why. It's just the way the density of the sand. It's not even. So you could just be walking and your leg could go halfway in.
The sand is so soft, and it's basically the sediment of it. You literally sink in, because a lot of sand, the reason why it's a little bit gritty is because obviously of the shells.
Yeah. And I figured out a really good trick. You walk relatively fast, you don't sink.
Oh, okay. So wow, that's amazing. Well, that'd be an experience in itself.
Yeah. And it's funny. And then in the water, you could scoop up the sand from the floor, and it was like clay. You could put it on like a little mask. Yeah, it was nice. I did a little mask. So that's beautiful.
South, and what an experience your mum got, obviously being from England, and seeing all that marine life.
Oh yeah, there was turtles like this close. I mean, if you got too close, they'd swim away. But there was turtles, and
I love that.
Yeah, it was really cute.
It sounds like a snorkeler's paradise.
Yes, it was, for sure. I went snorkeling, saw reef sharks. I felt like I was in a aquarium. I felt like I was swimming in an aquarium. It's like got the beautiful coral and massive shells on the floor. And you've got like Nemo.
I was just about to say, you're in a real life Finding Nemo.
Yeah, I was like little Nemo. I was like, oh.
Yeah, because often people say about the Great Barrier Reef. But I suppose I can imagine in terms of that type of marine area environment is the Maldives. It's almost like the Great Barrier Reef, but it's on steroids. it's just amazing.
Yeah.
You've got the sharks and turtles and the sea snakes. It's just it's a different world. Amazing.
Yeah, all of those. We saw lots of reef sharks, and somebody saw a dugong. I didn't see it. You're looking at me funny.
Yeah, what's a dugong?
A dugong. It's over this way. I'd never heard of it until I moved to Australia. If you went to the Sydney Sea Life or Sea World or whatever it is, you'd see them there.
What is it?
It looks a bit like a dolphin, but it's got a hairy, funny face, a hairy nose.
So it looks like a dolphin,
but it's like face slightly different shape. Like it's got like in the body, like the shape. It's like a cross between a dolphin and a seal.
Oh, okay, right. Okay.
It's called I can't believe you don't know what that is. You're gonna have to Google it later. But you're
not referring to like platypus.
No, dugongs. Honestly, you're gonna have to
look that up. Yeah, actually, yeah. You learn something new every day. So there we go.
Well, they're very rare. They're endangered. Like they're really, really rare to see them. So we do have them. You might see them in like the waters of Australia, but rare. And somebody saw them. So that's like an amazing sight because they're so rare. I guess they're on the brink of extinction, unfortunately. So anyway, some saw dugong, but yeah, stingrays, manta rays. Love that. You could just sit and stare at the sea life all day. It was beautiful.
Amazing. Wow. And so what amazing stories have we got this week?
Well, that's my question for you, because I missed so many things. I missed the Oscar. I missed your birthday. Well, yeah, I was here.
Lots of people missed my birthday, but that's fine. That's all on me. But like I said, it's a solo celebration, so it's all good. There were lots of things going on, yes, whilst you were away. And one of the things that was happening was the Oscars. So I'm a big fan of the film and TV industry. I used to work in that industry, so I tend to watch the Oscars live every year. I am a bit of a fan. Last year,
did you watch it live?
Yes, we're quite lucky being here in Sydney because the time difference with LA is that when it's our morning, it's their evening. And so we get to, in Sydney, one of the mainstream channels actually televises it live, which is great. And because we're all working from home, I'm like with the Oscars, like last year I had it on in the background and I was making my cups of tea and just looking out for all the presentations that I was interested in. And that's why last year I got to see the slap live.
Oh, yes.
So I actually was watching that in real time. And last year, and I remember I was sitting on my couch and I remember when it happened, I was like thinking that was not staged. And because you could just see the camera pan around the room and you could just even pick the energy off the screen. It just changed the energy in the auditorium. So that was last year. And I think with this year's Oscars, that's the reason I think why they kind of gave it a lot of attention too. And it got a lot of attention because of the controversy last year. A lot of the general public wanted to see, okay, how can Oscars survive this? How can they redeem themselves? And I have to say, and I think it was televised too, it's quite well known that it went seamlessly well, like unbelievably well. There wasn't any major hiccups, there wasn't any controversy, there wasn't any person kind of just getting unwarranted attention. So it was actually one of the most successful Oscar ceremonies that they had in history. It was a thoroughly enjoyable watch. And the story that I'm going to be picking today for us to chat about is from the Oscars, and it was basically it's the story of Michelle Yeoh, who won the Oscar for the Best Actress in a leading role. And Michelle Yeoh is the first woman of Asian descent, of Asian background, to win in this particular category. The article is from the BBC News, and the headline is Oscars 2023, Michelle Yeoh eyes a victory for unseen Asian communities. And it's got a picture of her holding up her Oscar proudly. And the article reads, it actually starts off with a quote from her character that she was playing in the film Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. So I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's quite an amazing film in itself. And I think it also, that film won Best Picture, which I wasn't surprised about, but I'll come on to that later. But the article, it starts off with a quote from Michelle, and it says, "Is it that I can't be here or that I'm not allowed to be here?" That's what the character's quote is in the hit film Everything Everywhere All at Once. The wry, subversive question from a film's antagonist who is hell-bent on ending the world in which she feels unwelcome sums up actress Michelle Yeoh's Hollywood journey. Yeoh is, of course, the film's unlikely superhero, Evelyn Wang, a Chinese-American immigrant and laundrette owner who is swept into a multiverse. The role, she says, is a reflection of a battle she's fought to be recognized in Hollywood, much like the question posed by her nemesis. And it says a quote, "You want to have a seat at the table so you can have a privilege to be seen and heard." Yeoh tells the BBC in an interview over Zoom, "What I'm asking for is the privilege to compete." Even from the day her character was born, her father says she's a failure because she was born a girl. "It's been a long time since I've read something that resonated so deeply with me." Yeoh's portrayal of Wang has stormed this year's award seasons. After winning at the Golden Globes and the Screen Actors Guild Award, she is now poised to make history at the Oscars. "I'm very aware that it's beyond me being recognized as an actress. It's a whole community of Asians coming forward and saying, you have to do this for us." Asians tend to not show so much emotion, and I think maybe it's a misconception that we don't need our stories told, which is not true, she says. "It's how we tell the story that makes a difference. The audience wants Hollywood to reflect the global community." So yes, that's a snippet from a BBC news feature, which celebrates Michelle's win. And I just wanted to also basically show that when Michelle accepted her award, in her speech, she actually said, "Ladies, don't let anybody tell you you are ever past your prime." So Michelle is a 60-year-old Malaysian actor or actress. She was born in Asia, and she ended up changing her name, as most Asians do, to fit in with society. So she chose the name Michelle. Her surname is pronounced Yeoh. And her mum actually, even though she was always interested in acting, her mum actually put her forward for the Miss Malaysia beauty contest, which she won when she was, I think, either 19 or in her late teens. And the reason why she did that was because that was the only way she could be seen on TV. It's the only way she could be seen on screen, to use her beauty. And then from that, she was recognized and put forward for auditions for action movies. And that's when she started working with people like Jackie Chan. And it turns out it's so strange how her career path has eventuated, because this film that she gained an Oscar for, Everything Everywhere All at Once, it was initially wrote, the main character was actually a male character. The character was written for Jackie Chan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Jackie Chan turned it down, and the producers and the writers then turned their attention to Michelle Yeoh, and they then adapted the screenplay for this film specifically with Michelle in mind. And I don't know if you've seen the film.
No, not yet, but I really want to see it now.
It's I have to say, I mean, I watched it when it first came out in the movies, and it was almost a year ago, maybe it's quite a while ago. And I remember I watched it late at night, and I remember coming out of the cinema, clocking it then and saying, that is Oscar worthy. First of all, for the costumes, second of all, for the storylines, and third of all, for the characters. It is bizarre beyond belief. And when I saw the Oscars and I saw the writers and the directors come to present themselves and collect their awards, I now understand why, because it's such a bizarre concept, bizarre storyline. I can't even describe it.
Oh, really? What's the name of the movie again?
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Okay, that's the name of the movie. All right.
Yes, okay. It also, the storyline revolves around the main character, played by Michelle Yeoh. This character's name is, I believe, Evelyn Wang, and she owns a laundry service. And she experiences death, and the story takes you on her journey about how she's managing her situation with her husband and with her daughter, and it takes you on a story about how she reflects on her life so far and how she's got to the position that she has.
Right.
And so in a way, it's kind of taking you back through her life, and you get all these stories, these snippets of her stories of her life. And that's why it's very much a looking back and reflecting. But it's done with such an artistic, creative eye. And that's why it's off a scale when it comes to, like, for example, the costumes and just the whole artistic concept. It's quite bizarre. I don't think it would be for everyone. And because it's so bizarre, and I watched it late at night, I actually had almost like, and I'm going to say it anyway, because it was almost quite trippy, because it was on that scale. I watched it late at night and then I went to bed. It was almost like hallucinating, because you've just watched so much bizarre concepts.
Right.
In the space of 90 minutes, there's so much bizarreness. Like, it's almost like it's quite trippy. And then when I saw the Oscars and I saw the producers and the directors, and I could see that, okay, they're of that kind of bizarre kind of elk anyway. So I can understand where it came from. It's great news that finally the Oscars and the Academy has recognized Michelle, not just for her background, obviously for her talent, but the fact that, yes, you know, we're actually getting the Oscars and the Academy are starting to see and include actors of Asian descent, because actors, I think, especially for the Asian community, like the East Asian community, you know, they've been struggling for years. I mean, the journey of Bruce Lee, for example, you know, I mean, Enter the Dragon is probably one of the masterpieces in film history. And, you know, and the struggles that Bruce Lee went through, not only to be recognized, but just breaking into the industry, you know, and that was so many years ago.
Yeah, I guess it's a surprise, isn't it? Because he's like one of the most celebrated Asian, one of the first really trailblazers. Probably wasn't the first, but the first and famous. Yeah, for sure.
And that was, and that like the film Enter the Dragon, if you haven't seen it, it is a cinema masterpiece.
I have seen it. I've seen it. It's a long time ago.
And ideally, you know, that was the first breakthrough. But for some reason, it's dipped, and now we're finally seeing a comeback here with Michelle Yeoh, who's 60 years old.
I don't know how long she's been in it. I think the first film I ever saw her in was like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or something like that.
Yeah, and she's done Crazy Rich Asians.
She's done lots more since that, though, loads more.
Yeah. So she's done a lot of action films too, but it's interesting how, you know, someone like Michelle, who's got all that talent, has to jump through so many hoops, as a lot of actresses and actors do in Hollywood. But age 60, you know, she's reached, you know, this is her highest point at age 60. I know.
And actually, she was in a Bond.
Yeah. I think Tomorrow Never Dies, I think, with Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
But the fact that, I mean, she's been, you know, in order to get where she is, she's changed her name. She's had to put her beauty ahead of her talent to get recognized. And then even at age 60, this role was supposed to be for Jackie Chan. Amazing how the writers didn't then go and choose another male Asian actor. They actually thought, okay, well, let's turn this around and see it with a woman, a female male character, the female being the antagonist. And I think that's great. So, and that's the reason also, well, not reason, but the fact that the film also won Best Picture, and also the film also won the Best Supporting Female Actress, which was Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, I didn't know Jamie Lee Curtis was in there.
Yeah, so Jamie Lee Curtis is in that film. You probably won't recognize her. So,
oh, wow.
And that was her first Oscar also, Jamie Lee Curtis. So again, the Oscars and the Academy are really celebrating the older female.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Because that's rare.
Yeah. And I think the only tiny bit of, not controversy, but the tiny bit of feature I saw online was a post-Academy reporting shows. When you in the Oscars, normally they do close-up shots of all of the actresses being nominated.
Yeah.
When it came to Jamie Lee Curtis's category, which was actress in a female leading role. One of the nominees was Angela Bassett. Again, another tremendous, talented actress.
Right.
I believe she was nominated for her role in Wakanda Forever.
Oh, okay.
And
I know who she is. She's amazing.
Angela Bassett, she also played, I believe she played Tina Turner.
Yes, she's awesome.
That was an amazing role she played. So Angela Bassett was also a nominee. Now, when Jamie Lee Curtis's name was called out as the winner, the auditorium erupted. She had a standing ovation, except Angela Bassett's face did not smile. She did not clap.
Oh, she might be a bit of a. She might have been very disappointed.
Yeah, I know. It was a shame. It was a shame.
Yeah.
That was only disappointing.
She's also in her 60s.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So, I mean, for everyone, I think, it's great. Even just being nominated changes your career in this industry. When you are nominated for an Oscar, that's groundbreaking. It's life-changing for you anyway. Exactly. So everyone's a winner. It's a shame that in this report, they did home in. And it was quite visible, because when Jamie Lee Curtis, she had to walk past Angela Bassett to go to a stage, and everyone else was standing. So it was a shame, but the good thing is not many people homed in on it. So maybe I shouldn't have even given it the attention that deserved.
Well, what's beautiful and incredible is that I think she's the second woman of color to get an Oscar. So that's brilliant. Well, it's not brilliant. It's terrible. But I mean, it's
Michelle Yeoh. I think it might be. I'm going to do a technical kind of correction there.
Okay.
So I think it was in the 1960s, 50s or 60s, when in the early days of the Oscar Academy Awards, there was actually a mixed race actress who won. And the reason why it's not noted anywhere is because this mixed race actress actually toned down her Asian background to be recognized in the industry. So I'll find out who it is, but it is actually, and the reason why I know this was because Michelle Yeoh was being interviewed about the Oscars, and she was asked about how would she feel about being the first woman of Asian descent to be nominated and win the category. And it was Michelle who actually highlighted this and said, "I'm not the first."
Ah, interesting.
Michelle Yeoh shared, and she put it out there. She publicized that I'm not the first. There was actually another actress back in the 50s or 60s.
Oh, wow.
It's a mixed race, and she deliberately toned down her Asian ethnicity. I think she even changed her second name.
She probably was kind of pitching herself as.
Yeah, she toned down her Asian looking appearance. Recognized and changed her surname.
Yeah.
So and that came from Michelle Yeoh herself.
Well, that's good that she's highlighted that. I think that's great as well. Wow, that's an amazing story and lovely. And it really is important. People don't understand the power of representation. And I think I don't know if I mentioned this to you. This to me highlights something I've heard in the past, in the workplace and corporations. I was talking to a senior leader, she'd been awarded head of global something, right? I can't remember exact role, but she was a big deal. And what she was doing was a big deal. And she was on the trajectory for, VPs and CEOs, that kind of thing. And we were talking about her ambition and, what she wanted to do and their mentor. And she commented how one of the goals was to be, she'd said she had expressed that one of her goals was to be the first Asian woman to have this really senior role, right? And her mentor, a man, had said to her, "Why the first Asian? Why don't just have the role like it?" And then she was like, "Oh yes." And I was really disappointed with her response to that, actually, because I felt like the challenges they overcome to become that first should be recognized and not diminished. And I felt that was if that's what he said, her mentor, that's what he was doing.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, because even the idea of being the first Asian or the first person of color, it's the idea of that's representation. Also, is standing for, and it's all about an individual who can then be the groundbreaker and be the representation or representer of people who are at home.
That's my
People who are at home thinking that, okay, yes, well, I can do this. This is possible for me, for someone who looks like me. And so that's why it's so important to be recognized as not just the first, but the first Asian or the first person of color or the first woman is because they represent that specific minority.
Yeah.
And people of minority who are reading or watching or seeing this from their own homes can then recognize and relate to the success, and then that then creates that seed of opportunity within them, and then that's for them to water and say, okay, well, if they can make it, I can make it. There is a path for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also works from the other side. So like you said, representation, so people can see what's the possibility, and it's an opportunity for them where they may not have considered it before. But also on this side, you've got people who are not a minority, say, who are seeing that, wow, it actually makes them notice, because it's like, I've had a white boyfriend coming to an African event with me and feeling like they're the only white person in the room, right? You feel it. You're like, oh. So then all of a sudden you have a visual of the discrepancy. And it's the same kind of thing. If you got lots of leaders who are used to seeing people like them, and all of a sudden you get somebody that's a minority or underrepresented being in a leadership position, it makes you take notice and think about that.
Yeah, it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah,
but also there's that, I suppose, and again, this could be like a rabbit hole kind of conversation whereby, sometimes you do think, okay, well, I wonder what that person's going through in terms of like, there's that. I mean, there could be lots of things around this, things like imposter syndrome.
Oh gosh, let's not even go there, because that's exactly the whole thing, right? Yeah.
But in terms of so I really enjoyed the Oscars, and so, but I have to say, but as we're talking about representation, as we're talking about equality and achievement, especially with women, I know that there were some features which were on the Netflix platform that were recognized by the Oscars Academy, which is fantastic. I just want to put it out there for listeners that if you haven't seen the film called The Swimmers on the Netflix.
Oh, you told me about that.
Please do so. It was actually for me, the best film I've seen this year by far in the last year. It's a shame it wasn't, I'm not sure why it wasn't recognized by the Oscars Academy. It was, didn't have lots of attention, but it's based on a true story. It's about two women who have talents in swimming. And it's actually the story of, and they're basically both refugees. And The Swimmers on the Netflix platform tells the story of one of the swimmers who has ended up becoming an Olympian representing the refugee community at the Olympics. So that's what I'm going to say about it. But I have to say to the listeners, please take the time to give the film a go. It's called The Swimmers. It's on Netflix. Yeah. It's heart-wrenching, but it's also celebrating. It's all about celebrating, like overcoming adversity. Amazing story.
Cool. I think you've mentioned that before, and I do have it on my watch list, so that's good. Thank you.
It'd be good to get your feedback on what you think of it.
Yeah. Okay. Talking about representation of women, I wanted to really felt the need to go back to the story we covered in the last episode, where we talked about the first ever youngest Black professor to be at Cambridge, awarded a position at Cambridge. And the way you read the article, it kind of appeared that he was the first ever Black professor at a prestigious university in the UK, really the top two, which would be Oxford and Cambridge. Yeah. But since then, having looked into it a little bit more, uncovered that actually the youngest ever Black professor was actually at Oxford, and it was a woman. And she had that award. She was awarded that position in 2021. Her name is Patricia Kingori.
Patricia
Kingori, a Kenyan woman, was the youngest Black professor at Oxbridge. We call that Oxbridge, which is the duality of Oxford and Cambridge, Oxbridge. So there you go. And I don't know why there wasn't so much press coverage on her nomination.
Interesting.
It is interesting because I could not find any not professional news, but news stories that actually from popular news sources.
What sort of data are we looking at? What sort of year are we looking at?
2021.
Okay, so it was only a few years ago. Yeah,
it wasn't very long ago. Interesting. But anyway, there's more. That's good. But let's move on because we are going crazy for time. So I picked this story because I love it. It just tells me, that we're paving the way for equality for everyone. Okay. And I just love this idea, and like, why is it not a thing really? So this is from Positive News. Positive News is a news source that only shares positive news. And often look at it to see what stories we can have that are positive, which is brilliant. So the headline is Buzz, world's first TV game show for deaf people. So mainstream quiz shows do not typically work for deaf people. And a new game show is changing that and is on the hunt for contestants.
Okay. So mainstream game shows don't work for deaf people. Is that obviously for a variety of reasons, but is it mainly because, like, for example, there's lots of sounds like buzzers and bells and that type of thing?
Yeah, but I know they can't hear it. I know there's closed captions, but there's a lot going on. They don't work very well for deaf people. So they're looking for new contestants, and it's called Sign to Win. It's one of the latest shows to be launched by the British Sign Language Broadcasting Trust, which commissions TV programmes made in British Sign Language. Its slate includes drama, comedy, chat shows and documentaries, as in the British Sign Language Broadcasting Trust, with deaf programme makers involved behind the scenes and deaf actors. That's good. So the quiz shows have proved, a bugbear for deaf viewers, with questions often being based on audio cues like music, answering your question, or buzzer sounds demanding quick fire answers, which lose immediacy with a picture in screen sign language interpreter.
Right, yeah, because that's what I was thinking. And it's interesting because I wouldn't have thought about that. So it's really great that you're covering it here, Tracy. Is that like I said, I come from TV production, and I've not often thought about the deaf community in terms of quiz shows and how they manage that. So yeah, that's really interesting.
It is. And actually, this reminded me of something. So a few weeks ago, we had the World Pride in Sydney. So I went to the World Pride Human Rights Conference, and I was watching some panel discussions, and they had people signing for interpretation on big screens, which was great. And it was almost like, it's that huge auditorium where you get big music concerts. Yeah. So they've got the screens up here because you might be right up there. And often I would be looking at the signing, because they also had subtitles. I'd have to say, I think the subtitles were AI because they weren't great in converting what was being said. But you could tell that the sign, because they mouthed the words sometimes as well, there's a time delay.
There is, yeah. And we saw that a lot in COVID announcements back in 2020. Every day at 11 o'clock, we would have those announcements with, the premiere. Then there would always be a sign language person next. So and then, game and quiz shows, things move fast as well, don't they? Yeah, that's why I mentioned at the top of this feature that I wonder how that would work because of that slight delay.
Yeah, well, this is why it's telling you, it loses immediacy. So In response, the British Sign Language Broadcasting, whatever they're called, executive producer Gillian Peele-Kalou dreamt up Sign to Win. It's their first game show, and it prioritizes the strengths of deaf people and draws on popular games from deaf club parties and events. Just didn't know it was a thing. It's absolutely unique and different, said the head of operations, Caroline Fearon. There's nothing comparable in the mainstream environment. Peele-Kalou explained how most quiz shows exclude deaf people who miss out on incidental learning, snippets of information overheard or picked up in chat. Incidental learning, yeah. Paired with barriers in mainstream education, it means deaf people often lack the general knowledge of their hearing peers. So in addition, game shows are based on hearing culture, inaccessible to deaf viewers or participants. So it says that we started thinking about what a deaf game show might look like. What if the questions and answers were based on deaf history and culture? What if everything was delivered in British Sign Language? And what if the strengths of deaf people were prioritised? And Sign to Win has £1,000 cash prize, includes spelling rounds where contestants have to guess words finger spelled in video clips, played at different speeds, and picture-led questions featuring famous deaf people and landmark deaf community events. As to say, we're proud to have created an engaging game show which belongs to the deaf community. And it's on Film 4, so it's also British, Together TV, and it streams online as well.
Yeah,
So
it'd be interesting also, you know how we said about the delay.
Yeah.
So with this format of this TV quiz show production, it'd be interesting to see how, when it's televised, you know how there's a delay with the sign language. If the show's going to be led by the sign language, then the voiceover, if the voiceover was delayed, so we wait for the sign language and then the voiceover comes in slightly afterwards.
True. But then that assumes there will be a voiceover.
Yes, yeah, but the voiceover isn't in line with the sign language because, in other words, we'd experience the delay as the deaf community often experiences a slight delay. So,
but that's assuming there would be a voiceover. There might not be.
Yes, assuming there would be a voiceover, yes. Because otherwise it's like, even with like the audience, you know, and like clapping, for example.
Yeah. I just think we should just do that anyway. It's so much easier for your hands.
I have to say there was because I'm in contract work, and I know that over the last few years I've had the opportunity to step into different organizations and help with their employer value propositions, for example. And one business I was in for a few months, in every meeting when they were celebrating some the weekly success or a business deal being made, especially as they were online, or even if they're in the office, they would always do that.
I like that actually. When I was at this conference, when there was clapping, some people were doing this. So yeah. I think I'm going to do that from now on.
Yeah, it's actually something, and I saw that with this particular business, and because a lot of people are working online, rather than sending through the clap yellow emoji, it's better to actually do this, and because it's silent, and you can still continue talking, and you do this, and so it's actually a really good idea, and again, it was feeding into their employer value proposition.
Yeah, so I think it's really good idea actually for virtual meetings. You're right. It's very visible when you're doing this as well.
And it's a nod to the deaf community, which is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to mention, because I was wondering, okay, so we've got this first, game show exclusively for the deaf community. Is there been any films? Like I was looking. Now, there's more and more deaf people appearing in films and TV, absolutely. So, with other cast and crew, I imagine, as well. But the film with the most deaf characters is a film that I watched, and I'd forgotten about it until I Googled. So it was a French film, or it is a French film, called La Famille Bélier. And I watched it at the French Film Festival, and it was the funniest film I've ever seen. It was so funny. I watched it with Joe, actually. We went and watched it together. Now, what's happened is they've made an English version that actually won an Oscar as well.
That's why I've heard of it before.
Well, this is the name of the film in English. It's not got the same name. The film in English is called Coda. Coda.
Yes, I've heard of that. And
Yeah.
it has won an Oscar or some kind of, it's a Golden Globe.
It makes Oscar history. What did Coda stand for? Like stands for something.
Oh yes, Tracy. Yes, because I remember at the Oscars and everyone was
doing this.
Yes, that's how I remember it. Yes.
Right. Well, that is the movie with the most characters in it, and it's really, really good. I haven't seen the English version, which I don't know if it's a film, the English version, or if it's made into a series, but the English version's on Apple TV, and I don't have Apple TV, so I've not seen it. But yeah, Oscar worthy as well, but a really good film. I would always suggest the French version for original, but we'll see. You have to watch the English and compare first. But great movie, and great to see more representation.
Yeah, but you get another movie recommendation.
Yes, gosh, we're just doing a movie review today, aren't we?
It's good. It's great.
It's good. All right, we need to wrap up soon, so let's do a what would you do? Are you ready?
What would you do? There we go.
What would you do? And then Hendy barks.
There you go. Sound effect by Hendy.
Yeah, sound effect by Hendy. Okay. So this is a workplace scenario. It doesn't have to be a workplace scenario. It could be a conversation with friends. It could be outside of work, not just inside of work. So a colleague or a friend is talking about a woman who landed a big project.
Okay.
And they say, wow, she got really lucky.
Okay.
What would you do?
Okay.
I've actually had this scenario outside of work. Actually, do you know what?
I was just about to ask, does that even happen nowadays?
Yes, I've had it outside of work. Like, she was really lucky she got this project or that promotion. And I've also had it to me by a date. And I remember getting really
How so?
So we were talking about work and our dreams and ambitions. And I was talking about how I just secured a 4-day work week. Okay. And this date had said, oh, you're really lucky to get that. Now, granted, I get where he was coming from, but I was offended because I'd worked really hard to get that. I'd created a whole business case. I'd looked up literature. I'd gone through my calendar for a year. So I'd done so much work, and plus I'd established myself and my credibility and my value. So I'd done all of that to secure that 4-day work week and be successful. And so I was a little bit put out by, oh, you're just lucky.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because it's always like, I suppose it's like if you flip it around and say, okay, well, if I was a guy and I said to a guy, oh, you were lucky, you don't often hear that. It's always that natural assumption that, oh yeah, he's proved his credibility, he's worked really hard, it's well deserved, and that's what it's all about. But whereas if it's a woman, it's like that's why I was surprised that that's still a response. Like it's like a woman's hard work, a woman's recognition. It's down to luck. It's not down to anything else. I mean, the reason why I say it's old-fashioned is because that's the kind of thing I would actually hear from my mum. I hear that from my mum a lot. In terms of my own accomplishments, my mum has always said, oh, you've been very lucky. You've been born lucky, or that was lucky, or that was lucky you had a manager who chose you. You were lucky that you had a company that recognizes you. And I don't push back with my mum because that's my mum's traditional old-fashioned values. That's what she was raised with. But other people in our community, the people that we grew up with, if that's still being said, if that's still being thrown around, it's a very old-fashioned response.
It might be an older, the next senior leader says that.
Oh, that's surprising. Because if it's a senior leader that says that's lucky, then they're not recognizing the capabilities. They're not rewarding based on the hard work, the tenacity that has been shown in the individual. So
exactly.
whether or not that be said to a man or a female, regardless, if that kind of comment is coming from a senior leader, regardless if it's being said to a male or a female, you're not recognizing the hard work and the tenacity that has got them to that position.
So outside of that, so this isn't a senior leader, it's a colleague, what would you do?
I'd probably laugh like I did. That was my first response. I'd probably laugh. And I personally probably wouldn't challenge it like head on, but I'd probably challenge it subtly.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly how I do that, but I think my laugh would probably instigate that. If I'd probably in response to that, I'd probably laugh. And then I'd probably very subtly then highlight the fact that it was my that I worked hard in order to.
Well, I because I felt harmed by this offensive faux pas, I'm very conscious of that. I've said, oh, they're really lucky. I've said that about certain things, but I'm very conscious about saying it about somebody's achievements. Somebody's met a great guy. Oh, they're really lucky. That guy's a wonderful man, kind of thing. In that sense.
With luck, I mean, for me, I don't know. For me, luck is a little bit. For me, luck, I also connect with, or for me, what's behind luck is very serendipity. So it's like to something you can't necessarily explain, where items come together at exactly the same moment to create that opportunity, and it's like a 1 in a million chance. It's serendipity, and that's if someone meets somebody, I often don't say, oh, we're lucky, because that meeting, it takes yes there's an opportunity for two people to physically see each other, but then it takes a lot of time and hard work, and also collaboration on a highly personal and intimate level to create that spark. So in terms of luck, if someone's lucky, then for me, that's I'd probably only say that if it's like a 1 in a million chance.
Winning a prize or something, like, of course.
Lottery.
Use it in that context. Absolutely. And how I've responded to this, like I said, I'm conscious of it now because I was at the receiving end, is I say I would comment. I wouldn't challenge the person. I would comment on what they said. I would say more than lucky, more like worked damn hard to get that. Just thinking, all they had to do to get there, it's pretty amazing. So that's kind of what I would say. I would just comment. I wouldn't just, to make them think about maybe what they said. But this is what it says, why it matters. Getting recognized for accomplishments can make a difference, especially when it comes to performance reviews and promotions. When achievements are attributed to luck rather than hard work or skill, it minimizes them. A colleague is talking about a woman who landed a big project. They say, wow, she got really lucky. So you could ask your colleague, you could say, I'm curious, what makes you think it was luck? That's like challenging directly, right? Yeah. This may prompt them to slow down and rethink their assumption. If your colleague responds in a way that suggests they doubt the woman's abilities, you might want to press more and ask why they think she's less competent. Is there a reason? Can they give an example? If not, that speaks for itself. And why this is even in here, because it's about bias, obviously, is that, we tend to overestimate men's performance and underestimate women's. We've talked about that a few times, and women do it themselves. Because of this, we often attribute women's successes to getting lucky, having a good team, and women will say that themselves. When they're successful, and it's good to acknowledge your team, absolutely, but to only do that and not recognize your own work and efforts, that's kind of common with women. Getting lucky, having a good team, or other explanations that diminish their achievements, while we accept men's accomplishments as proof of their abilities. Anyway,
yeah,
that is the end of what would you do. But yeah, you did. I just remembered that situation where I had that somebody said that to me about myself, and I was like,
yeah, it's really strange because as you mentioned that, I was thinking, because I went through I've been through 2 major career changes, and they're so vastly different. Often when that comes up, I've probably had that comment of, oh, you were lucky to get that opportunity to jump across. But it's been surprised, it might have been said so many times that it's now ingrained that I just got to wash it off now.
yeah, well, that's the thing. But that's the suggestion. The suggestion is that that's all that was involved.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not the case.
Yeah.
But that is all we have time for today. Great show. Thank you for chatting with me
about the Oscars. It was very much a film themed edition.
It was. I have to think of a film themed title now.
I can help you with that.
Cool. All right then. I'll speak to you soon.
All right, great. Take care. See you.
See you. Bye. Bye-bye.